Get ready to be inspired by a true force of nature. Our next speaker has not only sailed solo, non-stop and unassisted around Antarctica, but she's also a passionate climate activist. Known for her remarkable resilience and mental agility, she faced cyclonic winds and waves the size of buildings during a 92-day solo journey. A true expert in navigating to success. Please start the applause off at golf clap level. Bring it up to Taylor Swift level. Have a Christmas pageant size welcome for Lisa Blair, ladies and gentlemen.
Thanks so much, Marty. Oh, what a fantastic event this is. I'm so happy to be here to share some of my story with you. And so on that note, I'm going to kick it off and I'm going to set the scene of what it's truly like sailing solo around Antarctica. Everything was like mounting up. And after 5 days of just extreme sleep deprivation, I just felt like I couldn't keep going. I felt like the world was telling me not to go, and I started listening to those doubters, and I started listening to the naysayers that were saying, don't go, you can't do it.
I'm so close to home. Cabin's been demolished because I've just been ripping stuff apart. I just can't go through it again.
Looks like fun, right? Yeah? So who saw that and just thought to themselves, yeah, nah, Lisa can take that one? Yeah. Who also had the thought cross their mind, I couldn't do that? A few people? Yeah. Well, I was exactly the same once. I used to read these stories of adventures and I'd dive into these solo sailing books and I just dreamt of doing it one day. But I always thought to myself, I couldn't do that. What made me special enough to go on and do a project like that? It was actually a TV ad that changed my life. And I was just started sailing. I was the very beginning of my sailing career at the age of 25. And this TV ad came up and I had the punchline, just do, because the world is changed by doers. And I thought to myself, well, what exactly is stopping me from going and doing a project like all these stories I read about? What's preventing me from following that dream? Maybe if I just started, I'd find my way. So that kick-started an adventure lifestyle, and 3.5 years later, and I finally managed to purchase the boat, and I'm starting to get the project together, and I set off to sail solo, non-stop and unassisted around Antarctica. It's my very first world record. And I went straight into the roaring 40s, the furious 50s, the screaming 60s. And after spending more than 72 days at sea, sailing 3/4 of the way around Antarctica, I faced the greatest life-threatening scenario to date. My mast came down in a storm and it snapped off at deck level and it left me with a broken boat in the middle of cyclonic storms. Now that night, I went through change after change, being pushed to my limit, trying to fight to survive, to stay alive on that boat. And there were so many moments when I thought to myself, it was no longer a case of would I survive the night, but it was a question of would I survive the next 5 minutes? And as I went through all of that, I survived this storm and I was able to keep my boat floating, and I repaired the damage to the boat and I built a new mast and I sailed that boat to Cape Town in South Africa. And it's here that today's story starts. I arrived broken and I had just had the most terrifying experience, but I was so determined to go out and set that record because why not? There was no reason why I shouldn't or why I couldn't, apart from my own self-doubt and my own fears. And so I decided that now that I've had this unplanned departure in Cape Town, and a very bad day in the office, might I add, I decided that I was going to restart the record. I was going to sail back to where I dismasted, cross my track, and sail the rest of the way to Australia. Only when the media got a hold of it and when word got out that I was restarting this project, I got this flood of emails and text messages and social media comments from all people, all walks of life, all telling me, don't go. You're not going to come back alive if you leave for that trip. We're just going to have to rescue you. You're just a girl. All of these messages just flooding my inbox. Somebody even got a hold of my family's phone number, called my mum up at the middle of the night and said, don't let your daughter leave, she will die. These people were sowing their doubts into my support team. And I know that in a modern day, we are filled with people with opinions. And when I spoke to them, nobody could give me a real answer as to why I shouldn't go. And I'd done my due diligence. And I realized that you've got to doubt the doubters before you doubt your own abilities. And so I trusted myself, and I trusted the boat, and I trusted our capability to get through the next storms because we'd done it so far. Only this was the Southern Ocean in winter now. So think snowstorms, blizzards, waves the size of a 5-story building every other day. And so it was a big chunk to bite off, but I knew I could do it, and so I set off. And I set sail into the Southern Ocean, and I got incredibly seasick on my first night, spewing my guts up while I'm navigating past ships off the bottom coast of Cape Town. And then I got a final farewell from South Africa, which was in the form of a really bad dose of the flu. And with full body fever and shivers, I went straight into storms the size of a polar cyclone, one after another after another. And these waves are immense, and knockdowns just became my new normal. The wind can be so powerful in the center of these storms that I would have to cover my mouth and turn my head to get a fresh breath of air, just to breathe outside in the elements. And about 5 days into this situation and sailing across and trying to get back to where I dismasted, I was down outside on the deck of the boat, and I looked up, and a piece of rope tangled in a bit of rigging. And I knew I had to clear it before I went into my next storm system that night. And so I crawled out, and I got on my life jacket on, my safety harness, I tethered to the boat, and I'm crawling down the side of the boat, and the boat's getting knocked down time and time again by these waves. And as I'm reaching up to untangle this piece of rope, I just got this massive moment of intense fear, and I heard this breaking wave so violently loud because it was so incredibly huge smash into the boat. And I had a fraction of a second which I thought, catch the boat. As this wave picked my legs up, tore me off the deck of the boat, my legs, my hips, my waist was overboard. And I'd somehow managed to hook my elbow on a piece of rigging, grab my wrist, and as the wave took my body, it was jarring my shoulder out of its socket. And I was underwater, under the force of this wave. It's pressing icy tentacles up my nose. It's gone into all my layers, and I'm soaked through in seconds. And all I can think of is just hold on. Just keep holding on. And as the wave passed, I honestly don't know how I managed it. As the wave passed, the boat sort of popped up, scooped me back on board, and I flopped onto the deck like a dead fish. As I landed there, I just had this palpitating heart, just thinking, oh my God, I was so close to dying. And then I looked up and I could see a new wave forming, and I needed to get out of Dodge really quick. I crawled into the companionway, and I fell into a huddled heap of soggy mess, and I shattered. I shattered because at this point, I started listening to those doubters. I started thinking, they're right. If I continue on this trip, I will not survive. There's no way. And I just sobbed my heart out on the deck of the boat. And it wasn't one of those pretty cries. It was one of those really horrible, ugly cries. As I just gave up. And I hit my rock bottom. And so I did what every great adventurer does when we reach rock bottom. And I went down inside the boat, and I picked up the sat phone, and I phoned Mum. Yeah, good old Mum. And Mum answers, and I'm barely coherent in trying to talk to her as I'm sobbing so hard. And I say to her, I can't do it. It's too much. They're right. I quit. And my mum's been amazing at keeping me on track, keeping me focused, and giving me moments of pivotal advice at the right moment. And she said to me, okay, I understand. But if you really feel like you're in more danger and you need to go back to Cape Town, then do it. We'll support you. And at this point, my family had as much invested in this as I had. We had remortgaged the family home and everything. So she was sacrificing as much as me to make that call. But then she said to me this. She said, I want you to just imagine this for a second. That you're 72 days into your world record. You've never dismasted. You're 1 day ahead of the men's record. And Australia is a 4-week sail away. Imagine that you're experiencing conditions like this, you're feeling like this, and you've got these problems with the boat. Would that be enough to make you quit? And I thought about it, and I thought, actually, no. I realized that I was starting to look at the beginning of this trip as a whole new journey rather than continuation of the previous part of the journey. And I realized that if I was in the middle of the ocean and Cape Town wasn't just 200 miles away, less than a day's sail away, that I would never have quit. I wouldn't have thought about it being an option. And so I decided I would push through. And I would sail the boat for a day, heave to through a day, sail the boat for a day, heave to for a day. And heave to is where we park the boat in these incredibly huge storms and we stall the sails out so we can get through the middle of them. And then eventually finish the world record, becoming the first woman in the world to do it with one stop. Thank you. Yes. And 5 years later, I now hold 5 records, and I broke the overall speed record, going back to the Southern Ocean, sailing the whole way around Antarctica for a second time. But none of that would have been possible without the right support team behind me. Now, for me, it was my mum. But it was a million micro moments of my mother, my shore manager, my volunteers, giving me those moments of encouragement, steering me back to course that got me that far. But I never would have succeeded without that. I would have quit that day. And I never would have done another adventure again. So I want you to take a moment. Think about this out of the context of sailing around Antarctica, because I can probably imagine that most of you are not going to go around Antarctica. Just funnily. But what's your version of it? And do you have the right support network to help you get there? Whether that be as a business leader running a team, or whether that be in your family network. Who would you call when you hit rock bottom? And who in your team will steer you back to course? You've been amazing. It's been my pleasure to share some of my story with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. Big round of applause for Lisa Blair, ladies and gentlemen.